Hello and welcome to your Weekly News Roundtable. This is The Catalyst. I am Quinn Dobson. I am web editor. I'm joined by opinions editor
Diana Colavita.
And PR and outreach manager
Hernandez.
And today we are talking a pretty big news story causing a lot of international controversy, which is the potential Ukraine peace plan that's being negotiated in Riyadh right now. And I thought we would kind of give it a look, and we were talking about it earlier. We could get an end to this war, but not all of the parties are happy about that.
I mean, I feel like resources do play a really big role in having that. I don't think Trump wants to let go of the resources that we currently have. So ending the war might jeopardize that in a way. So I feel like we might not be there completely, but we're definitely going somewhere for sure.
Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy around U.S. troops in Ukraine. The British have requested it, whereas the Trump has said that that's not necessary. Diana, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think my first big thought is that you can't really do a peace talk when you didn't even invite one of the parties in the war to the peace talk. Peace is well overdue. I definitely agree with that. I don't know. I just wish that, I don't know. I mean, Trump and foreign policy, it stresses me out. I saw this thing online. It was on the Al Jazeera website. They quoted a part of Trump's social media post calling out Zelensky this morning, I guess. And he said, think of it, a modestly successful comedian. This is Trump. Think of it, a modestly successful comedian. Volodymyr Zelensky talked the United States of America spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start. Trump, a former reality TV star, wrote. So that was a little shade from Al Jazeera.
There's a lot of facets to it. I mean, it is kind of that aspect we were talking about last week about kind of American kind of fascism kind of shedding the kind of veneer. We don't have to pretend that Ukraine is anything but a client state, right? That's just given full bear. It's like, no, daddy is going to negotiate with Russia. Like, let the children kind of stay out of the discussion, and that's kind of laid bare. It was sort of interesting to see Europe kind of excluded from it, which isn't. Thing is, this is one of the things where I think Trump has been on the right side of the issue for a while. I think Biden's plan to just throw Ukrainians at Russia until it falls, or until they give up, was always ill-sighted. That was never going to happen.
I also feel like that's probably why Ukrainians don't trust Trump as much. I know I saw it on Al Jazeera. They said that they basically don't believe that he's for them, that they're going to get what they want from him, and they're devastated. And it makes sense now that you look at the information that's being pushed out. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, the Ukrainians are getting the short end of the stick, and it's kind of like something, like Libya, where you have a client state that their interests aren't necessarily now aligned with the U.S. empire, and so they're even though they're still under kind of the auspices of the Americans, they're kind of required to kind of bend the knee at this point. This is something that has been kind of brewing for a while. We've seen since 2014 the annexation of Crimea, but we've also seen pushes to bring Ukraine into NATO. We've seen, if Seymour Hersh is to be believed, the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline was planned since 2019. And so a lot of these kind of moves against Russia have kind of gone unreported. It doesn't justify invasion, but it's sort of, there's this other dynamic that's going on. And so the hope is that this peace treaty brings us forward in relations with the world. under the Trump administration is not entirely likely. I think he's pivoting to China. But, yeah.
Yes, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, the United States, I mean, we're imperialists. And, no president had, almost all presidents had imperialist agendas where, like, countries like Ukraine are just sort of like, whatever. Like, and this was very true of Biden. Like, he may have said that he was trying to help Ukraine, but it was more about getting at Russia. And I mean, I'm no fan of Putin. I'm not a fan of Russia, of our current Russian state. But it's like, it just gets to the point where it's like, superpowers arguing over who has more power, and it's just, I mean, yeah, we don't smell as clean as people like to think we do.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of employ direct and indirect power differently. I mean, you ultimately still have similar forms of, or like, the same expression of power. It's this kind of domination of capital that restricts freedom, restricts geographical mobility, and free expression. But the U.S. Internally expresses it in the forms of indirect power, soft power, where capital itself limits, whereas in Russia that you have the much more direct governmental suppression. That, but I mean, it's a similar form of government, and internationally, I think it's kind of ridiculous that Russia has been sanctioned when the U.S., which has invaded multiple countries under false pretenses, toppled Libya along with NATO forces in 2011, and has generally engaged in behavior that is shocking, remains the world hegemon, remains in power. And so, there is a tragic irony to the situation in Ukraine and to how the U.S. presents itself as this sort of bastion for freedom in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Iraq War that was based on a lie, the weapons of mass destruction that Iraq did not have. So, yeah.
I'm old enough to remember just in the last few years, our aggression against Venezuela, which has aimed to topple a government which, whether elected democratically or not, it's not the U.S.'s, domain to go into other countries and tell them how to run their elections, all of this stuff. And yeah, it's really, Mary Jane, do you have any thoughts on this?
Mostly, I feel like, because we're coming from a country where expression is important, and we have sort of that gift where we get to express ourselves any way we want, and so when we go into other countries and sort of demand that we have control over their politics, over their elections, it's sort of contradicting when you think about it. We're a country where it's mostly imperialism, and it's kind of shocking that we're going into other countries and doing what we fought so hard to not have done to ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, there was the really, I remember post-January 6th that a lot of countries that the United States has gone in and done election and watching and basically staged coups, and we're all like, oh, do you need someone to come and help you with your election? And it was just, so, it's hypocrisy, but it's also part of the whole American project.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly hoping that we see peace. It does seem like Ukraine is going to be giving up a significant amount of territory, the Donbass. At this point, it seems like that might be the only realistic option. Ukraine was, enlisting 50, 45-year-olds, just, people who shouldn't be fighting. And I think that's kind of proof in the pudding that this war is not worth continuing to fight. There's been J.D. Vance, and the thing is, this is one thing where I personally don't have as much of an issue with the Trump administration on this. I think this is the good thing to do, but they always somehow manage to go about it in the worst possible way. And so we're seeing this horrible speech that J.D. Vance gave, where he's like, in America, we believe in free speech, but in Germany, you're censoring Nazis. It was just, yeah, something different. And then...
And why would Germany be censoring Nazis, JD?
I know, right? Which, yeah, and then there was, and then it's just one of those things where discourse in politics, you just end up kind of despising everyone that's speaking, because then the liberal response was, what about Navalny, who was this Russian dissident who was very popular in the Western media, but he's one of those people in countries that the U.S. is trying to stir things in, where he's super popular in the West, and then in Russia was not a significant actor, and it was just like there's just a sort of strange imperialism going on here, where this is how we discuss other countries. I mean, I still remember Russiagate, which was, I mean...
Yes. I know. I mean... Okay.
Yeah. The thing is that the pivot to Asia is not working because China is doing very well in their economy, in their, kind of global strategy. And so we need to keep on pivoting back to the much more, criticizable sort of despotic nation. Interesting discussions all around, guys. This has been your weekly news roundup. I know that we said that we were going to have a more positive story, but in this current climate, it doesn't seem very likely. This has been Quinn Dobson, web editor, signing off.
I'm Diana Colavita. I'm the opinions editor.
I'm Mary Jane Hernandez. I'm the PR manager.
And we're trying to get a schedule on these, so you should see us popping up in your inbox next Friday. Without further ado, have a good day.